Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this session on dependency theory of development. Dependency theory is the notion that resources flow from the periphery of poor and underdeveloped states to the core of wealthy states, enriching the latter at the expense of the former. Something that it's like a continuation of what we did in the last lecture, where did talk about the periphery and the core and how the wealthier nations or the nations which are developed in nature kind of feed off the poor countries or the underdeveloped countries. It is central contention of dependency theory that poor states are always impoverished and rich ones enriched by the way poor states are integrated into the world system. So they are told that in order to have reap of the benefits in order to become a ideal model nation like the developed ones, you need to be able to sacrifice something, and in this process of a sacrificial mindset or attitude um, towards growth, what happens is they continue to be in that state of rich becoming richer and poor becoming more poor, and they are told that they are integrated into the world system, that at one point in time their situation will change, that um, they would grow on to become a more developed nation only when they attain that state of richness. This theory was officially developed in the late 1960s following the World War II as researchers searched for the root issue in the lack of development of Latin America. Now, like I said in the last lecture, that Latin America could not succeed because North America always kind of loomed large. North America kind of fed on the resources of Latin America. So, to take up Latin America as a case study and see whether dependency theory really works or not, there are theorists who proposed such sort of an idea in the late 1960s. The theory arose as a reaction to modernization theory, okay, almost as a challenge to modernization theory, an earlier theory of development which held that all societies progress through similar stages of development, that today's underdeveloped areas are in a similar situation to that of today's developed areas earlier. Therefore, the task of helping underdeveloped areas out of poverty is to accelerate them along this supposed common path of development. So, what modernization theory did is it gave a standardized set or a standardized format or a standardized idea of all of us, which is something that this the theoreticians of this theory vehemently disagree, and they propose this as a reaction to the modernization theory. No, it doesn't work that way. What works instead is indigenous culture is lost, and most developed nations feed off the underdevelopment state or the status of those countries. Dependency theory also rejected this view, arguing that underdeveloped countries are not merely primitive versions of developed countries but have unique features and structures of their own, and importantly, are in the situation of being the weaker member in a world market economy. Okay, so the very fact that they have the underdeveloped countries or developing nations are not an earlier versions of developed countries. The developed countries were not at one point in time that sort of didn't experience that sort of underdevelopment. Okay, so proposing it as a former model and a latter model doesn't work. This is something that the development theorists, the dependency theory, rejects completely, and says that the underdevelopment, the underdeveloped countries or the developing countries are not mere replica of the earlier versions of the developed countries. Rather, they have their own unique features and structures, and we need to understand and identify those structures and see how they can be placed in the world market economy and how that could help change things. Dependency theorists also typically divides it into two different categories surrounding the theory. One is liberal reformist, another is neo-Marxist. Those that align with liberal reformists typically believe that targeted policy intervention is the most effective approach to improving lives. So, the current state of lives in underdeveloped countries or developing countries can be changed if um, policy interventions could be targeted, if policy making could be targeted and critical intervention could be made, then it's a very effective ways of improvising the conditions of human lives around. And this is something that is proposed by liberal reformists. Comparatively, neo-Marxists believe that a command-centered economy is the more effective approach to improving lives. So there are two different, pathways in development theory, and the theories are typically divided on the lines of one set of ideas defining group of people called as liberal reformists, and the other set defining themselves as neo-Marxists. So while one focuses on targeted policy intervention as an effective way to change life or improve the living conditions of people, the other one says that a command-centric economy is an economy where not just one group of people are trying to benefit, rather very aggressively pushing an economic market in a more effective way could help us in improved lives. Dependency theory explains global inequality as caused by colonialism and neocolonialism and the dominance of formal colonial powers as over low income nations. What it means is global inequality is caused by colonialism. That's something that the development theorists propose, that it is because of colonialism global inequality has can be placed, and neocolonialism continues, right? The global stratification is seen as a tool used by high income nations to maintain their advantageous position at the expenses of poor nations. So global stratification, where we tend to identify and stratify what are the possible reasons why a particular country is developed as against an underdeveloped nation or as against a developing nation. Those sort of stratification, those sort of stratification measures as looked as tools which are used by the high income nations or the more developed nations to maintain their status quo, as to be in that state of advancement or to be in that state of advantage, whereas it is happening actually at the expenses of the poor nations. The poorer nations or the underdeveloped or the developing nations, their resources are allocated, their money is being, their resources are being taken away, and the developed nations would succeed in a much better way as against this. Now, if you just look at the basic relationship, economic relationship between India and America, if you see so many American companies coming and investing in in the Indian market, because they know that the labor force over here is cheap, they can make more revenues, they can and we are a hardworking nation. Most of the times, people are ready to in order to better our living conditions. We are ready to slog, and we are ready to give everything that is possibly there to make the company work, to make the company make better revenues. So in such sort of a situation, the company is only growing, and that company is based out of America. That company is not an Indian company. So they are making America economically better, right? And in the process, what is happening is we are being reduced to a labor force. We as a country are being reduced to a labor force. So this is what the dependency theorists most of the times state, that the global inequality is largely caused by colonial rulers, followed by neocolonialistic ideas. Both these theories provide a framework of understanding how the economies of different countries are connected. Sociology in the 21st century tend to use these concepts and language of world system theory. World system theory, which says that every country in the world can be integrated into a similar framework. So that there could be a variation in terms of economies, but they are all interconnected, and then they need to the poor countries need to strategically think how to reach that state of economy. However, when dependency theory emerged in the 1950s, it proposed useful concepts for understanding the relationship between nations. The world system theory and dependency theory use many of the same arguments and draw similar conclusions. So if you, in order to get a better idea or understanding about how this works, you need to see how world system theory works and what are the propositions, and how dependency theory borrows on the arguments and draws similar conclusions. In dependency theory, low-income nations are viewed as victims of exploitation. Okay, that's clear by now. We have already said that and discussed how the high-income companies, high-income nations or countries feed off the low-income nations or the underdeveloped or the developing nations by kind of exploiting them. This exploitation is a result and a continuation of colonialism. So even if they are not colonized anymore, but they are still interconnected with the very ideas of a colonized nation. In a colonial system, a wealthy nation attempts to gain control over a poorer nation's resources and labor, often through military force. This is what has happened. Even our country was colonized, and this is what happened, right? So our resources and was used, our labor force was used to make England a better place to live in. And England that did that with a lot of other countries as well, which it colonized. So colonialism began to disintegrate after World War One, with the process speeding up to World War Two. But the colonialism was replaced by new colonialism, with more powerful countries controlling weaker nations through indirect means. This indirect means is, like I told you, how America invests in India or how China invests in India. So to understand that, this is a country which has potential resources, which has a cheap labor force. So we could use this, in order to make our country economically superior and better. So neocolonialism uses the similar principles as colonialism. Only thing is, there is a different ruler. So neocolonialism uses economic and political power rather than direct military power to force a colonial relationship. So, and those people who believe in those kind of ideas, people who help American companies come and establish, their companies over here, also get something in return. So understand that. So that it's not aggressively pushed as a in a physical way where military power is used, but strategically, politically, by ideologically swaying the people's mind, a colonial relationship is established, something that dependence theorists propose. This colonial legacy has created a system in which high-income nations depend on their ability to exploit cheap labor and resources of low-income nations. Okay, so this is a continuation of that sort of a system or structure where natural resources and cheap labor of the low-income nations are always exploited, and neocolonialism continues this exploitation and supports the class structure of nations. The class structure that exists between different nations that helps us identify which country is developed, which country is in a developing state, which country is underdeveloped. That sort of a class structure is possible, or it is supported by neo-colonistic ideas and set of exploitations. While colonialism was direct exploitation by government, in neocolonialism, governments are often replaced by multinational corporations, something that is there. That's what I was talking about. More number of companies, MNCs, and even the homegrown companies, they all get into that sort of a model where the rich becomes richer and the poor becomes poorer, and with certain dreams being sold, which are capitalistic in nature. According to dependency theorists, large multinational corporations take advantage of low wages and few laws protecting laborers or workers to manufacture goods cheaply. Typical way how companies succeeded in America and Europe in the earlier stages. They work with weak governments to ensure access to cheap labor and natural resources without investing in the infrastructure of the country. They literally feed on the infrastructure that is allowed, and they build some infrastructure, but they ensure that they get 20 times more benefit than whatever they have invested. And governments, which, when we say weak governments which kind of switches gears, kind of bend policies, kind of create favorable decisions in order to allow these sort of corporates, in order to allow these sort of companies to expand their market and succeed and grow in the society. Governments of high-income nations are either complicit in allowing this, or they actively participate by working with governments of low-income nations to maintain the situation. Something that can happen when you look at the relations, the economic relationship or the business relationships strategic business partnerships between India China, between India America. um, you can try and reflect upon this sort of a statement, how we work as cheap labor force, and we take it with a lot of pride that we work for MNCs like Amazon. An example of this relationship is the way the apparel industry works in the United States. A very few clothing purchased and worn by Americans are made in the United States. The American brands selling the clothing receive most of the money consumers pay, while the workers who manufacture the clothing in factories located in low-income countries receive only a tiny portion. The fact that you uh, any of the apparel brand, let's say for example Levi's, um, what people wear in America could be manufactured somewhere in Africa, but those people who manufactured it get very less amount of money as against those people who are selling it over there, or the amount of money that the consumers pay to wear the brand. And this is something that is applicable to all of it put together. Here's a small diagram. One second. Yeah. Which talks about the relationship between core, periphery, and semi-periphery nations and how that works. So dependency theory sees core, periphery, and semi-periphery countries as part of an interconnected world economy characterized by mutual dependency and exploitation of periphery countries for labor and resources. Okay, so high-income countries, what they do, who are high-income countries? The colonial ones, the former colonial ones, or the neo-colonial powers. They exploit low-income countries. They use the labor and resources of the low-income countries. They create and encourage dependence of low-income countries on high-income countries. They invest money into the low-income countries which lack infrastructure, rely on high-income countries, sell cheap labor, natural resources, receives loan and become indebted to the high-income countries, and they kind of pass on the cheap labor and natural resources to the high-income countries. So this sort of a circle, if you see there are two circles, and there is almost a cyclical process of how money is pumped into low-income countries by the high-income ones, and how the high-income countries get access to cheap labor and natural resources, and the process of exploitation almost follows a sort of continuum. Eliminating poverty, according to dependency theorists, can only be accomplished by eliminating these predatory relationships. Okay, so it's almost predatory in nature, right? So that one country is feeding off the other. So this sort of predatory relationship must be eliminated by eliminating poverty. So low income nations will always remain poor until they can turn their resources towards developing their own infrastructure, economic infrastructure, to rebuild. That's why I was constantly saying and focusing that the local needs to be paid attention to. So our country needs to see that what all local resources we have, and how those can be potentially explored in order to raise the economic infrastructure of the country, rather than looking outward, looking at foreign countries for investments, so on and so forth. One way to achieve this is by nationalizing natural resources and industries and using that money for development. So that money has to be pumped back into development purpose. However, nationalizing resources and industries has not always led to significant development in countries that took this approach. Critics say that the lack of competition led to inferior goods, and that corrupt governments never allowed the money to be spent on real development, which is a crisis across something that we experience in India as well and in other parts of the world. Wherever there is a developing nation, this sort of a situation has happened, that the reason why we would not trust the local ones and we would prefer the foreign ones, and because it is presumably good most of the times, because they actually sometimes are, because those governments did not, or those infrastructural companies did not pay attention to exploiting it to the point that the consumers get bad product, and the consumers over there can fight for their rights in a lot more ways as against ours. So we would end up having being offered really sad goods or inferior quality goods, and the money that those institutions would earn would never spend that money on real development of the nation. And that's one again cyclic order of exploitation. They point to how India's economy grew after privatization and to the failure of Latin America's government to develop their economies after nationalizing their industries. Something that can work as a case study. So that's more or less about the dependency theory. And I'll see you in the next session. Hope this session has been useful. Thank you so much. Good day.